Egypt. Agriculture.
Ooh.
Right?
What's that?
What's that?
If it's our word of the day, we better decide what it is.
Right. What's funny about... We said this before on like one of our, like the second one, that if you were a science fiction writer and you wanted to make a ridiculous thought experiment nation that was the most ideally suited thing in the world set up for growing grain, you couldn't have made a more extreme example than Egypt, because it never rains and there's no cloud cover, and once a year in an incredibly predictable way the water rises to very predictable levels most of the time, and then it kills a lot of your weeds for you, and you don't have to pump the water or have really advanced irrigation because the water rises anyway. You basically just have to dig out pools to collect it and then release it when you need it. Kind of like terracing, but not really. But they would create ponds and then let the water out.
So you don't even need brilliant engineers. It's that nice.
The water rises on its own. So they had an easier time of growing grain than Mesopotamia, because Mesopotamia have to do a lot more work to get the water up, and the flooding is much less predictable. So they're both desert countries with very fertile alluvial plains, ideal for growing wheat and barley. But in Mesopotamia, the floods, you don't know. You're never entirely sure. And so the amount of work you have to employ to create and maintain your irrigation system takes a much bigger bite out of your society. And the bigger that bite is, the less you have to spend on other things.
Right, you're just richer if you don't have to spend that.
Yeah. It's like, are you going to get a 50% return or only a 20%? Well, that extra 30% can go a long way towards, I don't know, building a pyramid or a centralized bureaucratic state.
So, is there any evidence of how soon after they started with agriculture that the major Egyptian kingdoms, dynasties came about? Was it fast?
Fast? No.
No.
So, I don't think wheat and barley are even native to the Nile Valley. They came from up north, from like the Fertile Crescent in modern day Kurdistan, southern Turkey area.
Yeah.
There, wheat and barley are abundant and wild.
Yeah.
And there was years ago some study that was done, not even a study, a social experiment of using Stone Age tools, handheld sickles shipped with flint.
Flint-napped.
To see how much work would a family have to do to feed itself. Labor to return on labor for harvesting wild wheat and barley.
Wild, not cultivated.
Correct.
So pastoral. Or settled, but not agriculture.
Sedentary, they went and they collected wild wheat, and then how much work it took to farrow, to shuck it, and they thought the calculation was, well, one family would maybe need to work 2 weeks out of the year in a really abundant area.
Wow.
To harvest a full year's worth of wheat. Obviously, it takes more work than that to stay alive, but the food requirement.
Wow. That sounds nice.
They didn't call it the Fertile Crescent for nothing. It was very well, in terms of natural experiments, just like Egypt, the Fertile Crescent was a very natural area to have agriculture evolve on its own without human direction. Just regular human behaviors doing what seemed natural. Why wouldn't I go harvest the wild barley? The act of harvesting itself and that lifestyle put evolutionary pressure on those species
of barley,
wild wheat, and it domesticated them
without intention or agency.
There was no deliberation.
And
they didn't decide to invent agriculture.
They didn't decide to invent something that they'd never invented before, that they didn't know quite existed, but just living their normal life, decade after decade, harvesting the wild wheat. Well, the ones that the stem didn't shatter as quickly made it closer to home.
Yeah.
And so was a selection freshman.
Yeah. Well, some wag has said that wheat actually cultivated humans, and that's why there's so much wheat. It's one of the most common species on the planet.
Right.
I mean, and those genes are continuing. I mean, that's kind of a funny way to look at it.
That's the right way to look
Yeah.
at
Right.
it. Because in the example of like in
It domesticated us,
Yeah.
not vice
Yeah.
versa.
Yes.
Yeah.
that's you need to think of it both ways. Like you can't just say, well, I'm going to invert it in my head. But in the case of non-human species at agricultural systems like the ants and the fungus, like the Atta species, or there's a termite fungus situation in Africa. They don't know which species started it, so to speak. And maybe there is no start, but it could have just as easily been the very first mutation could have been a fungus a mutation in the fungus made the fungus more palatable to the ants.
Yeah.
It might not have been the ants going after fungus.
Yeah. So I think I read where somebody did a fairly detailed study of the pastoral hunter-gatherer lifespan of humans, and then after agriculture, the lifespan went down, but the birth rate went up.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So hunter-gatherers live better, longer lives with a more varied diet and less brutal, back-breaking toil.
Yeah.
But they have fewer children.
Yeah.
And their populations can't take a blow as easily as a sedentary society.
Yeah.
Okay. It was quite a trade-off. This is in that *Sapiens* book as well.
Yeah.
But
That's where I read it then, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to say, did the quality of human life improve with agriculture? Highly doubtful.
I've become suspicious.
7 billion people and counting.
Yeah.
Here we are.
Successful from what point of view? I mean, what is success?
Yeah.
Evolutionary success is offspring and descendants. Right?
Yeah.
And that's probably the ultimate.
That is evolutionary success.
Yeah.
Right.
Unfortunately.
That always reminds me. I mean, because what you were saying sort of just made me think. Oh, that's leaner, right?
Yeah.
Smaller population. Less offspring.
Yeah.
But nice. Like I probably mentioned this before, in some instance or another. But when I was a kid playing SimCity, my big brother would try and build these cities and expand.
Right.
I was never very good at the game, so I just wanted to make something small and maintain it. And as long as I can keep it that way, I'm good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, take the StarCraft example, like the Zerg. Just rush them with all these cheap small units, right? You can have your fancy, very sophisticated system, but maybe it's much more fragile, And in terms of evolution, there is no proactive way of knowing what's more successful in the long run. Nature bats last. The jury is still not out. The verdict has not come in on whether agriculture was a good idea or not. That's for us mortals to decide. That's a moral issue, not an evolutionary issue.
Well, it's not, because like you said, the last word isn't in yet.
Yep.
And nature bats last. But let's say from the current moment, historically, just for my own edification, how long have hominids been hunter-gatherers until they became, like, what's the comparison here?
Okay, so behavioral modernity, for the shorthand, 50,000 years ago to today.
Okay.
Agriculture is, just say 10,000 years ago,
Okay.
So they,
It's not a huge, but 4-to-1.
Yeah, 4-to-1 roughly.
Yeah.
Like you can get into trouble on the margins of those, but I'll stick by that. You could say 12,000 years ago, end of the last ice age, it seemed. So we lived through like 2 ice age pulses, I think. Behavioral modernity.
Yeah.
This is fully modern humans, fully modern human behavior, not even anatomically modern, which is much older. So there were like 2 ice age pulses, I think, that behavioral modern humans lived through, and then in this last one was the one that we developed agriculture for some reason.
10,000 years ago, give or take.
The ice melted and agriculture arose. When the ice was at its height, there's no evidence that I've ever seen of any agriculture going on, even though there are fully modern humans.
Yeah.
You know, so
Should we? We don't need to, but should we flesh out what that means?
the ice melted, the seas rose.
No. The fully modern humans.
Oh well, this is another one we did.
I think
Blades,
we did.
beads, butts.
Right.
bones, beauty.
Right.
Burial.
That's the shorthand.
Oh
for-
yeah, I threw butts in there.
Yeah.
Burial.
Yeah,
burial.
the butts was the
Butts
joke,
are good though. Butts are very nice.
but only half a joke.
Right. Honest, you know. Well, I
Well,
mean, we
no,
were
because
walking
that's
around-
anatomical.
Yeah, people were looking at
modernity.
each other's butts a long time before they were modern. There's just something
Blades.
so
Blades, beads,
burial
burial,
Beauty.
beauty.
and bone, using bone for tools and not just stone.
Ah, interesting.
Right.
That's interesting.
Sure. That we don't want to get down that
No,
rabbit
no,
hole.
fair enough.
Probably if it's fully modern behavior, we should probably add bullshit.
I think so.
Sorry for the joke.
No, I mean, yeah.
Well, that is something people talk about, though,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Deception and the
Yeah.
development of
Sure.
our big brains.
I would. That's what I think. You
Yeah.
know, like it's meant to be a thing good at fooling other people and being fooled in turn and detecting it. It's a bullshit detection organ.
Sure.
Also, is there a link between storytelling and bullshitting? You know.
I mean, one is malicious storytelling
Yeah,
and the other
that's
isn't.
right.
I don't even know. You know, like our brains are not really good at helping us swim into the deep ocean or fly or dig. You know, they're not like a mole's leg that really helps us dig.
So in a way, saying bullshit is the ability of people to make things up, to manipulate other people, and you
Yeah.
want to be able to detect deception.
It's a social organ.
Yeah, sure.
Hmm. Okay,
It's yeah.
but
So-
that's the modern
Yeah.
human.
So for 40,000 years, modern humans all over the world, and but except the Americas, probably, it's like 12,000, 20,000. That's an iffy one. I'm not
Okay.
getting into that.
Gotcha.
And not Australia, but for about 40,000 years, well, yeah, actually, yes, Australia. Modern humans all over the globe, old world, are futzing around, having a grand old time.
How about like goats? Were we doing?
No. Plants precede the domestic animals except the dog.
Okay.
Dogs are way old. Dogs are wolves that adapted to follow people, probably next to people following big cats.
And that happened in high latitudes.
Yeah. And dogs are way old. They're like 30, 40,000 years. People and dogs go far back, much longer than people and wheat.
Right.
It's strange to think about, but we do like our dogs a lot. Dogs have been around so much longer than horses. You know, you just got to keep that in mind. And eventually you'll get a phylogeny of the timing of like this and then this.
Oh, there's a lot of research and publications coming out about the domestication of dogs.
Right.
Just something recently, and I don't recall anything about it, but there's a lot of research into that.
Yeah.
And what I remember is somewhere in Western Asia, high latitudes is where the best evidence now is for the first.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, they make the point that you can take a wolf pup, raise it, and it will not mature into a dog. They're a pretty different animal, even though they can interbreed. Same species, but a real different animal. So wheat and barley. There's kind of this core 5 group in the Middle East that comes so close to each other that you can think of it as a package. It's not a linear thing. It's not wheat and then barley and then peas and then chickpeas. It's roughly all about the same, even though they all do have their individual stories. But you've got wheat, barley, lentils, chickpeas, and is it flax? I think it's flax. Those are kind of the big 5 plants, and then it's sheep, goat, pig.
Wheat, barley, lentils, chickpeas, and maybe flax.
I'm pretty sure flax. I mean, you get linen from flax, and
Now,
that's way.
how about say the millet and rice in China? Was that-
Exactly.
same
That's a
kind?
different package.
Yeah.
But they also had wheat and barley. But yeah, millet. Yeah. So in East Asia, it's millet, wheat, barley. Up in the North China Plain,
Sorghum,
sorghum. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
maybe.
I don't know.
Yeah.
There's a lot of sorghum might be in Africa, and then the rice was in the South. So like the oldest Chinese, the Zhou dynasty didn't farm much rice. You know, that was developed farther in the south. And so you have these geographic regions of the earth that are very conducive for the evolution of agriculture, that are these ancient centers of crop diversity, is what they say. Vavilov, a Russian scientist, Vavilovian evolution, he looked for centers of diversity, making the logical assumption, because we don't have a time machine, that wherever a certain species, a certain number of crops has the most land races and the most diversity of domestic species and wild species, is probably where the domestication occurred first. The evolution of domestication. It wasn't one guy sitting in his hut going, "Oh, I know what I'll do."
Eureka!
Yeah, not like that. No, it took, it evolved.
It might have been a gal.
Yeah.
I mean, women were probably the ones that were doing it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. Yep. You're right. my sexism.
Well,
No, it's
our language.
Yes, it
I
is.
know you're not sexist.
Right.
A, there's not an inventor, and B, if there was,
Yeah.
maybe it would.
Yeah. So you can take a map of the Earth, the flat, projection, and
The
there's
flat Earth.
right. There's like 8 different centers all around the world. The Middle East is one. That's that first package I mentioned, because that's what modern Western people like me have studied the most.
That's our Fertile Crescent.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's our Fertile Crescent. But there's also northern China, West Africa, like Nigeria region of today's Nigeria, but also the Ethiopian highlands. There's one in the lowlands of the Amazon, but also one in the highlands of Peru. So Peru is where the quinoa and potatoes. Lowlands of South America are where a very important one, the cassava. Huge amount of carbohydrate all around the world. There's one in the sweet potato also came from South America first. There's one in eastern North America. Several crops, sunflower came from there, but several others were domesticated and then abandoned because they were supplanted by more effective ones coming up from the north. So there's 3 in North America. The other one I haven't mentioned yet is Central America.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Valley of Mexico. Guess what they domesticated there?
Maize.
Corn. Yeah. Maize. Yeah. Hugely important. And maize actually made it north over generations and supplanted. They just stopped growing it. It was called like small barley or something, like some goofy little plant that evolved to be domestic, spread around eastern North America, and then was left aside. And it went back to being feral, presumably. It's really something. And it was like a goosefoot. There was also a Chenopodium species. Another one is the highlands of Papua New Guinea, which is where sugarcane first evolved to be domestic. And I think Southeast Asia somewhere, like South China or like northern Vietnam, is where rice was first domesticated.
I was southern Sichuan. That's what I've read.
Okay.
That's the earliest evidence.
Sure. So it's all these centers, and they're not talking to each other at
Right.
first.
Independent.
Yeah.
But actually, the language you're using makes it easier to remember they're independent, because you're not saying where agriculture was invented. You're saying where these particular crops evolved to become domestic.
Yes, they co-evolved with human societies into domestic species.
And independently, this is what's so interesting. This happened not just once, but you say 8 times?
Maybe more, yeah.
Maybe more.
Yeah.
I mean, this is intriguing in history. I mean, it wasn't somebody bringing this idea
Yes.
that to independently evolve this thing is really, it's called convergent evolution if
Yep.
if it happens.
Right.
And it's very interesting. What are the pressures? If you have similar selective pressures, then you might expect that. And maybe that's what, I don't know if anybody's looked at it from that point of view. But
Well, it seems like one of the most significant common pressures among them is the presence of humans.
Right.
Like you just said, it wasn't somebody just sat down and said, "Oh, this is what we're going to do." It wasn't planned out.
It's not some Steve Jobs
happened.
figure.
It
Yeah.
happened.
Right.
Independently with no communication.
Yeah.
But what's goofiest about it, and this is another rabbit hole, we're not going to sit there and conjecture about cognitive revolution or something, But if there's a fairly distinct environmental change, like, oh, I don't know, the melting of the ice,
Yeah.
then it's easier mentally to postulate, like, oh, if the ice melted and they didn't have much their old patterns of life therefore had to change because of this massive environmental change, then maybe that helps explain the evolution of agriculture. But don't tell me that the Amazon was so incredibly different before and after the Ice Age,
It wasn't.
or the highlands of Peru.
Yeah, because
It
the ice
shrank
was a
in-
long ways away.
It's a long way
But
from any
climate-
ice sheet.
So it wasn't the ice, but climate changed. I mean, that's
Sure.
what
Oh,
happened.
yes,
So
it did. Yes.
It could be climate related, but it wouldn't be where it happened. Well, the ice retreated.
Yeah.
Right.
You're not looking at melting ice sheets in the Amazon and then going, oh, now let's plant
No.
cassava. So I don't, but roughly, so let's
Do these eight
centers of,
instances of domestic crops, how close in time are they?
that's what I was just
Yeah.
about to say.
Yeah.
It seems like roughly within about 4,000 years, most of them are in place. So maybe like 12,000 BC, it's beginning to happen in the Middle East. The evolutionary process is underway. By 8,000 BC, 4K later,
Everybody's doing it.
just about. I think that's roughly, I might get the multiple choice wrong on the test, but that's about the case. About 8,000 BC, it's in Papua New Guinea and in the highlands of Peru. I mean, maybe give or take 6,000 BC, but I mean, they are grown. Corn exists by at least 6,000 BC. Like you could sit there. This would actually be a really useful chart to actually do,
Yeah.
of just the timing. But,
Well, and along with that, where didn't it happen? Western North America.
right?
No. Where else?
It's
Western
any.
Europe. Western Europe.
Yeah, Western Europe. No,
Yeah.
temperate forests don't seem to support it.
No. So I mean, if you're going to try to figure out why it happened in these places independently, then you also want to look at where didn't it happen.
Sure.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. It might be useful to actually do that, like eliminate the factors that aren't there.
Yeah.
The same way with domesticated animals, they all have to have a similar social structure of their species, herding behavior, grouping behavior, like predictable mating, things like that, hierarchical structure. Whereas the diversity of animals that can't be domesticated is beyond classification. Like, oh, okay, well, this one needs to. You can't domesticate cheetahs because 3 males have to chase a female until exhaustion to breed them. How big a breeding park would you need to have herds of cheetahs? Whereas cats, domestic cats are banging away all the time, right? It's no problem. It really, that's what Jared Diamond said. He, like all domestic animals are domesticable for the same reasons. All the ones that aren't domesticable are domesticable for their own reasons.
That's
From Anna Karenina. He was quoting them, and I'm quoting him.
that's funny.
Yeah, and that's right. And so you could probably do the same thing, like line up all your conditions, get your dates right, and I have not seen that one done.
Yeah, I mean,
That'd be fun.
You want to look? Well, I mean, that's.
We could do a side project.
Yeah, there you go. Another thing that just occurred to me when you're saying this, you have all these civilizations that occurred in these places. All of them that I know of, where they're selecting for certain things in their crops, they also at the top are very careful about their breeding. Who does the emperor and who's the king marrying? And
That came after.
did it?
Yeah. So I mean, it might be causality with it's just like the arrow of time is one behind.
Yeah.
What seems to happen is non-agricultural societies are very egalitarian,
Yeah.
much more diffuse political structures. And the longer you have an agricultural system in place, it drives political centralization and hierarchy. Not always. Papua New Guinea avoided that.
Yeah.
They never established a bureaucratic state or whatnot. It's this vibrant, incredibly ancient civilization, but they never unified into
Isn't
it.
that interesting when you say New Guinea? Because I think it was the reason Jared Diamond wrote books, Guns, Germs, and Steel, was a guy from New Guinea that asked him, "Why did Europe win out? Wasn't it from New Guinea?"
Yeah, he was. Yeah. And he said the people in Papua New Guinea are the most intellectually curious he's ever met.
Yeah.
I mean, they've been growing sugarcane and eventually other crops. God, I don't even taro. Maybe they had taro. I don't know, but they have a sophisticated agricultural system that evolved in isolation in this incredibly challenging environment for 8,000, 9,000 years, completely independent. You know,
Is it also true that this is another, it's an interesting case. New Guinea's different, right?
sure.
So you have all
Anyways.
these valleys, they all have different
Oh, yeah.
languages.
Oh,
You
yeah.
don't go from one valley to the other.
There's 1,000 languages just on the island of Papua New Guinea.
Yeah, I mean, it's the most.
Or were.
Yeah, it's going down.
Yeah.
Is that where that we've got some of those nice whistle? I mean, they're not
Those
proper
are all over the world.
They're not
believe-
proper languages. They sort of piggyback.
They
on
do
the
have that, yes.
Yeah.
But those actually are all over the world too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I love
yeah.
the whistlers.
Oh, dude,
obviously.
those high valleys and stuff. I've been to the highlands of Peru, and I can tell you that the use of a whistle language would be extremely useful to have one. Those valleys are so impenetrably steep and rugged that I have no idea how the Inca managed to unify it. That to me is one of the real mysteries. It is such a rugged environment. So to imagine Papua New Guinea, it's similar topography. It's just, it is unbelievable. Like if you didn't have your car, if you were there and had to walk, it's like, well, I'd rather just kill myself.
Actually, I'll just stay.
Yeah.
I guess I'm not going to the next valley over.
Yeah. I mean, you sit there and look, and you can see across the valley right over there. You could wave to a person, but to go down and then back up is like, well, that's a day away. I'm not even exaggerating.
No, I understand. I mean, that's why I say.
I could almost throw a frisbee to him, but it's going to take me a day to walk to him.
Yes. It's,
Geometry.
yeah.
Got me again.
Yeah, you look. I mean, you sit at the base of a mountain and look up, and you can't tell if it's a star or like a human light. I mean, it's difficult. And they had what? Potatoes, quinoa, oca, and a few others. I mean, these are old. I've stood on the terraces of Machu Picchu, and Pisque, and a few others, and I never understood how important imperial architecture was until I sat there and stood on it myself. There's the sacred valley, one valley over from Cusco, the capital that they built, and they terraformed an entire mountain that you can see when you pull over this the edge. They terraformed it to look like a giant condor made of the terraces that they grew their potatoes and crops on to help feed the city of Cusco. And then you look down 4,000 feet to this river bottom at the bottom where they grow the sacred corn for the city of Cusco. And it clicked right then. I think seeing that, I now would understand the pyramids and the Colosseum and this other. They did it without draft animals. Llamas were the heaviest thing they had. They did it all with human power. It's breathtaking. I highly recommend it. And the air there is so nice to breathe.
he was raised in the mountains. It is nice.
Yeah, but the mountains of Montana are nothing.
Nothing like this.
You got to realize the thing about the Inca is they absorbed all other polities. There were no neighboring states. They unified all the important parts of the Andes except the very northern part. And they did it in like 100 years. Yeah. It's really, really, really something. Yeah. So, those independent centers of agriculture, some of them developed these incredible hierarchical systems and highly centralized bureaucracies. I mean, it doesn't get more hierarchical or centralized in the ancient world than Egypt. Yeah. I mean, it was the first modern state. The idea of it not just being city-states or tribal, no, this is the two lands, It's a fully unified with bureaucrats being sent from the central government to govern the provinces, collect taxes, do a census, do a cattle count. They would calculate your taxes based on how high the Nile flooded, and then they knew how much wheat you would be required to grow, and you send that in. It's the first modern government in a territorial state. Here's the border of Egypt. They would set up a stele or an obelisk and say, this is the southern border of Egypt.
Yeah.
It's not like that in other parts of the world. And then other centers of agriculture don't ever turn into that.
Well, the Chin, he set up. He
Oh yeah.
established
Oh, I
uniform
just meant certain others.
later.
I would not all of it. Some do form it, and
Later.
other yeah. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
profoundly later.
Yeah.
Yeah. But both of them are highly centralized,
Yeah.
bureaucratic states.
Uniform everything.
Yes,
Reporting.
based on river valleys and flooding,
Yeah.
and the grain you can grow from it.
Just have you read much about the Mayans and all the recent discoveries with the LIDAR discovering?
I have.
I
I've been
mean,
looking
this
at it. Yeah.
exponential increase
Yeah.
in what we know about the structures in the Yucatan and the
Oh yeah.
area of southern Mexico and Guatemala and places. I mean, it's
Probably-
unbelievable.
Probably right now they're doing the same exact studies with the Amazon,
Yeah,
and they're going to find probably very similar results.
yeah.
Where they go, oh wait, the Amazon was like this giant garden and center of.
It's absolutely mind blowing.
It is.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's mind blowing because it's not a criticism, but we think it's mind blowing because we look at a rainforest and say, well, it had to be wilderness.
Yeah.
But let's say this part of the world collapsed because of peak oil or something, and then and you just have this overgrown blackberries and forests everywhere, and then they did LIDAR and said, oh my God, there's a city that they call Eatonville.
Yeah.
Right?
That's true.
So of course, they
That's
were
true.
modern humans with
Yeah.
bureaucratic states and competing with each other.
Yeah.
So it was in that sense they were just like us.
Yeah.
We're finding the suburbs
Yeah.
of Mayan civilization. There was
Whereas I say this,
Yeah.
whereas in Egypt, there is a desert, you can still see the stuff.
exactly.
Right? Whereas
Exactly.
in the rainforest, there's competition and stuff going up. We're talking about.
No, that's exactly
the
right.
the kudzu couldn't grow over the pyramids to hide them from us.
The preservation of papyrus in Egypt, because the deserts of Egypt are antiseptic. They are so dry. So they find these papyri and stuff, and the detail of records they can get is to the point of tediousness.
Yeah.
They're all mostly tax records. And so it's like, oh, and this year he paid this much in wheat. And after a while, you're like, okay, I don't think Indiana Jones, you can't do a story about, it's not an exciting story to just read decade after decade.
Yeah,
of tax
groundbreaking
records.
discovery. I found 200 years of
Well, I think
logs,
that
tables.
Yes.
That same sort of thing is, I think, also true in China to a lesser degree. Is northern China preserves stuff better than southern China?
Oh, yeah.
Where they recorded on bamboo, maybe,
Yeah.
and stuff like this, which would decompose.
Yep.
Yeah.
Whereas
This is
they're
gone.
putting on rock steles,
Yeah.
Or the cuneiform and the.
Well, right.
Yeah.
Irving Finkel makes that point. And,
Yeah.
Sort of, because it happens to be one of his
Right.
areas of expertise, but he loves to. It's sort of one of these cute things that is sort of true, but also sort of a joke. But these clay tablets are gonna
It's not wrong.
outlive our paper records, and after the cataclysmic EMP, even our digital records.
Yeah, no, there's the historical record for Mesopotamia, specifically that geographic part of the world, is very, very good as long as they use cuneiform. But when the world became more globalized and they could afford to import papyrus because it's easier to write on, a lot of the records, poof, vanish. It's not that they weren't keeping them. Papyrus goes away.
Yeah, nice thing about the clay tablets is if you have a fire,
Yeah.
still good.
Yeah, half of all the cuneiform documents that we have from the Middle East are from this fairly short, pretty obscure period we call Ur III, which was a little like 200. No, it's like 100-year empire based on the city of Ur, and we know who owed what to who in the central government, and like very detailed. We can reconstruct their central government. Of like, this is how the Bela system, here's your state-owned slaves, Here's where they, and then because it's all cuneiform, and then other periods are like crap. We don't know. That happened maybe 1,000 years later. It's crazy because they switched from mud to paper. Wouldn't you?
That's progress for you. Of course, I'm sure the switch to paper, allows more folks to become literate.
It does.
Probably.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like the scribe class is.
Expands.
Yeah.
Yeah, but learning history should hopefully be more than just being able to reconstruct tax records from 3,000 years ago.
You can only deal with what you get.
Yeah, you're stuck with it.
Yeah.
You don't want to audit somebody who's been dead. You said you had 2 oxen, but you actually had 3.
But it still tells you a lot.
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
Here's a funny one that I don't know. I don't even know how to analyze. I don't even really know how to set up the question. But the Mayan writing system, for some reason, is devoted to for reasons I don't understand and maybe can't even understand what I don't understand about it, is long, very long, like algorithms of numbers based on like prime number, these huge, enormous cycles of things related somehow to their calendar. That's what most of their writing is about, and there's very few documents about tax records in the Mayan writing. They look for it, they can't really find it.
Do they have seasonal rains?
Oh yeah. Oh, wet and dry season. Oh yeah.
If it's like that, I bet it has to do with seasons.
Oh yeah, they were
I guess.
excellent astronomers, and then but in the old world writing systems, it's almost nothing but tax records.
Yeah.
Like you dig up, if you say I want to take a slice of Egyptian society in the Middle Kingdom this century, most of it is going to be about tax records. If you make the exact same premise for Mayan writing, none of it is going to be about tax records. And I have.
Wait, so are you saying we understand the writing system, but it seems to be.
Oh yeah, we've deciphered Mayan writing.
Right. Okay,
Yeah.
but it's just sort of.
So
Are you saying the stuff that it still exists seems to be this?
Yeah, there are these weird astronomical big cycles within cycles of numbers.
Yeah.
What I am saying, just as myself, Adam, is that I don't understand their mind. Because their civilization was just as successful as ours. We are incredibly devoted to tax records, just like the ancient world, just like your cuneiform tablets, but they were not.
Yeah.
And they had, I don't know what that means. I would like to understand
No,
it.
I understand now what you're saying.
Yeah.
Why did the two separate, or why are they different?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Whereas with like the Chinese writing system, it talks about oracle bones and the way the oracles were made, and it was almost like a statistical. They would take almost the average answer that the ancestral spirits would have based on the cracks in the scapula and tortoiseshell and stuff, which is the basis of the writing system.
Right. Before it was a fully.
Yes.
Yeah.
And after learning a bit about Chinese civilization, I feel like I have a very feeble idea of the Chinese mind. Whereas with the Mayan mind, I have no idea what on earth, because I'll tell you that the equivalent of their PhDs in their number systems knew exactly what the hell he was doing.
Yeah.
So that's all. So,
Yeah.
So these separate zones, these separate geographical regions of independent evolution of agriculture, some have a continuity heading to this day. Others started something and then had breaks and rises and falls in the continuity. Some even domesticated plants that were later abandoned or supplanted by others. And others have remained isolated to this day. And other, like Papua New Guinea, and others have, you feel bad for like patent laws, but like cassava is one of the most important tropical sources of carbohydrate in the world, domesticated in the Amazon, and they've never seen the benefit, but it has spread all over the world. The sweet potato is another one.
Well, you mentioned taro.
Yeah.
Or taro.
Yeah. What's in?
Potatoes, South America, I thought it was Africa.
I thought it was African too.
I really did.
Yeah.
might be yam.
Yeah, but then I was gonna say, but I might be
Yes.
thinking of yams.
That's
yeah,
a, that's
'cause
a
I always
modern
do
one.
that.
Yeah, that's a modern mistake. So true
Yeah,
yams
yeah.
are from
Or
West Africa.
African,
Yeah,
right?
but
Yeah.
but a sweet potato is a potato.
Yeah, they're Solon. They're no.
Solanaceae or
Yeah, I think they are.
Yeah.
They might
that's
be.
the family name of the
The nightshades or something.
Yeah, that's the nightshade family. They might be morning glory.
whatever.
Yeah, right.
But I understand.
They-
I understand.
So the South American sweet potato actually spread to Polynesia before the Columbian Exchange. They were growing sweet potatoes in Polynesia well before Columbus really started, spreading things, the Columbian Exchange. And so that's a story in and of itself. But I don't think the sweet potato made it to China before the Columbian Exchange. So you have these multiple threads, and you
Yeah.
can parse them out, and that's what's really important.
Yeah.
What's the James Diamond's?
Jared Diamonds,
Jared Diamond's stirrups, gunpowder.
guns, germs, and steel. That's
Yeah.
that's the European explanation. But you know what?
But
what?
I mean,
So
I was just
you could-
thinking. You were saying you could write. I mean, that could be a whole exploration in itself. You could,
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's just you could write a noun
If-
pop history book titled, tomato or
Yes.
sweet potato.
Yes, you could. It's the
Yeah.
moon and the dewdrop. You can take one thing and explore the world with it, or you can explore the world and then bring it back to this is why we're drinking beer,
Yeah.
and this is why we can digest milk
See,
as
that, the
adults.
people have probably already written those books.
I'm
to
sure
be
they have.
honest. Yeah.
But you could have a guilty. You could have a Mongol governor of somewhat the Khwarezmian, Khorasan, who felt kind of guilty about the genocide the Genghis Khan had inflicted upon them to make the conquest happen and unify the world into this peaceful whole. Right, instead of a book, Guns, Germs, and Steel, he would write the stirrup, the saddle, and the, composite bow. No germs,
Yeah.
because so it's all there, right? The Jared Diamond of the Mongol Empire.
Yeah.
So saying, well, no, it's not because we're superior culturally. It's because we had these inventions and we were better at warfare, and it's not your fault. And we kind of want to make good on our privilege as Mongols.
Well, but I think Jared Diamond's point, it's a circumstance of history.
Exactly.
It's not that it's inevitable that
Yes.
history marches that way because of some force from behind or it's pulled.
Right.
That's his point, because that's the Western view has been either it's pushed from behind or it's pulled ahead
Right.
by some sort of force.
But
It's a circumstance.
it is. You're exactly right. But all I'm saying is that the Jared Diamond of the Mongol Empire. Today we feel
No, I understand.
kind of bad for steppe nomads and are like, well, maybe we should help try to preserve their way of life.
Yeah.
The Jared Diamond, whereas if you were being ruled by steppe nomads, you might be like, I don't, go away. You're horrible oppressors.
sucks.
It'll change.
Yeah.
Yeah, things can change.
It's funny you mentioned Papua New Guinea, and this probably isn't worth exploring. It's just because I'm a dumb guy. But when I hear Papua New Guinea, isn't that one of the few places that there are still extant folks living as hunter-gatherers?
Yes, it's Papua New Guinea has like as much diversity as the rest of the world combined. So yeah,
Gotcha.
you have the lowlands. Papua New Guinea is this thin spine of incredibly steep and rugged mountains, and then a outwash plain of rainforest at the south.
Oh, nice.
And
It's like
kinda
a
to the north.
fictional. It's like when someone makes a video game and like has a really. Sorry. You get everything in there in a small space.
It's
this is the desert. This is the forest. This is.
They
the
have
coast.
glaciers in Papua New Guinea. It's
Okay.
on the equator. Mount Wilhelm is incredibly high. It's like an MMO RPG that gets out of hand.
Right.
In the lowland area, that outwash, there's a volcano that sticks up, and there's no people that live on or in it. And you go down into this caldera, this little area, and there are rats that are like 5 feet long.
You might say that they are of
It's-
an unusual size.
You could say that. I don't think they exist.
They have an incredible bird diversity.
Oh, the best.
And this is one reason Jared Diamond went. Also, Ernst Mayr, another biologist. But I'm gonna, because I have to leave. I want to stop with a comment. Papua New Guinea is also where they wore their penis sticks sticking up
Yeah.
like this, whereas the West They have their penis sticking down from their neck. A tie. Have you ever seen the pictures of these guys with these penis shields?
I've seen some. Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
mini.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
then
smile,
ritualized
huh?
warfare apparently. And anyway, I just had to because I have to go. I thought it
Oh,
was
okay.
something
Yeah.
You'd have to bleep.
No, I like it.
No bleeps.
We can do another round some other time.
We could.
Yeah.
All right.
At my age, I wish I could go with you guys. I mean, just keep going. I could drink 5 more beers. There was a time I could do it.
Well,